Anyway, my name is Eric Hodson. I work with the Arizona region of USA Volleyball, and today we are thrilled to have Mary Carlton, who formerly Mary Callentine, who was the, I guess you would say, the pioneer, the originator of the Arizona region, and our current commissioner, Harold Cranswick, who picked up after Mary left and has run the region since. So you're the only two commissioners we've ever had in our region, which is great. So I'm among royalty. So thank you guys very much for attending. And I think, Mary, as I told you, we're in our 35th anniversary this year. And we a lot of people, me included, and I've been with the region for over 20 some years, I don't actually know how everything got started. And so we really wanted to have you on and kind of talk about, hey, where did all this come from? Where did this whole thing come? So maybe give us your background a little bit and how you got your foot into volleyball and where it went from there.
Oh, well, what a long ago story. It actually started in Tucson. I don't care what the Phoenix people say, but it started in Tucson. There was a representative, I can't remember his last name, but it was Dick. And he was on tour and visiting the grassroots volleyball boards with Parks and Recreation. Now, I don't know if Phoenix had one, but the one in Tucson was extremely dynamic. And that board got started because of the old professional team called Tucson Sun.
Mm-hmm.
And the community, the volleyball community, packed the venue. I mean, it was like standing room only. There's the volleyball people were so addictive. And I really don't know, I've been trying to think how I even got involved with that board, but somebody threw my name into the Tucson Parks and Rec. My guess is that I was the only woman that was involved in, that's true, that was involved in organizing tennis or the volleyball tournaments at the different parks. Mm-hmm. My husband then and I had a large piece of property, and we had our own volleyball court. And weekends, there must have been 12 people that came out Saturday and Sunday just to play volleyball. So maybe that's how my name got thrown in. I'm not sure. But that board was started in 1986. In 1987, the USVBA representative came out and just pleaded with us to create a region. Arizona was affiliated with the New Mexico Sun Country region. Mm-hmm. And players would really have to go to Albuquerque or Amarillo to play. And that wasn't just adults, that was juniors. And that incorporated juniors from all over the state. And that's what kind of broke my heart. It's like, why are these kids, who we had more juniors in Arizona than we did in New Mexico? Why are they traveling this far? And why? And
were they 1 or 2 day tournaments? Do you remember? Was it a 1 day tournament, 2 days?
There would be 2 days. There would be a tournament on Saturday and one on Sunday. And the kids got stuck in the Sunday tournaments, especially if they were in Amarillo or Albuquerque. Can you imagine the driving time? And then they had to go back to school on Monday. That's what got to me. It was like, wait a minute, we got more juniors here than there.
Can I ask how many clubs and how many teams were around at this time? Was it?
There were 8.
8 clubs or teams? Clubs?
8 clubs.
Okay. And Phoenix, Tucson predominantly, or?
Phoenix, Tucson, and Flagstaff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. There was one club in Flagstaff. Pete Myers.
Oh, Peter Meyer, yeah, of course.
So anyway, given the numbers we had and the numbers that New Mexico had, or Sun Country, I was invited by Dick to join Donna Howard from the Sun Country region to attend the commissioners meeting. So, you know, there was a woman, I can't remember her name, that she and I went to Colorado Springs along with Donna Howard to this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just to give us an eye opener. And they had, well, you know, Harold, they had the table and all the commissioners sit by it.
Right.
Well, I was in a chair behind Donna. And the lady that came with me, she was in the audience. Well, there was the vice president at that time was known as, it was Becky Howard. Well, the meeting had started, and then she finally looks around the room and she points at me and she said, "You have no right sitting there." Well, if you know me, I said, "Okay, but woman, I will never forget you." So I pulled back from the table, and there were so many, there must have been 20 commissioners at the time, and steam was coming out of the ears of almost all of them.
Wow.
Because she was so rude. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, oh, I'll be at this table next year. So that was really
So there
funny.
was 20, basically like 20 regions at that time?
Yeah, I believe it was 20, yeah.
Wow.
And that's
Okay.
why they were trying to expand it.
Yeah.
Because they knew that the professional teams had blown up the interest in volleyball. And the college volleyball teams, the women's teams, were really starting to take off. So I go back, me and this other woman go back to Tucson, and I'm saying, we really need to do this. I was so pissed off. Sorry, I was just like, you don't tell me I can't sit at a table when I was not at the table. I was behind someone. And you want Arizona to be a separate entity here, and you're going to treat me like this?
Wow.
So Corey Morishita, Paul Becklin, there were a lot of guys that were pushing me. Yes, you got to do this. We got to play in Arizona. We're tired of traveling.
Yeah.
And we contacted the Phoenix Parks and Rec, and they blew us off. And then Corey knew a lot of the junior coaches, so he contacted them. And Corey was an assistant coach at ASU along with Rosie somebody who used to play with the Tucson Sun also. And it just snowballed. And that's the only word I can say is it just snowballed. When the junior coaches realized that there was a possibility to stay in Arizona, they just said, go do it. Just let's get the numbers together. So we did a petition and we followed all the guidelines for USVBA then. And I went back the following year and I was invited to sit at the table. I think much to Becky's chagrin that we actually pulled it off in less than a year. The following year, we were voted in. So we were voted in, I think, in '89. So it took that long to get us to that point. And then
so you presented the paperwork in the meetings in '88, and then it takes them a year to vote to put you in. Okay. Didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was a scary deal because for me it was because I'm not a public speaker. And so I had to actually plead with this group of people that I didn't know and all the other people that were involved with the board, all these board of directors peoples that played volleyball when they were kids, I guess. And the following day they had their vote, we were voted in, and then I had to go back to Arizona, and then we had to have elections. Well, that became a really political issue because I had done all this background work. So the Tucson people put my name in as commissioner. Phoenix comes along and decides, hey, we don't have to travel. And they put up a fella to be the commissioner. I could have cared less. I accomplished what I wanted to do, and it was my main goal was to get the juniors to just play in Arizona, stop the traveling.
Yeah.
Well, we held this vote, and the day before the vote happened, the fellow that was running against me, he had just gotten his law degree, and he took off to California. So I just won by default. It's like, what do you say? Oh, okay, I went this far, I might as well take this on. And it just ballooned. It just grew. Had it not been for Corey and Paul, I would have been just a fish out of water. I mean, they were just so instrumental in developing the region. Corey was so strong with juniors. Paul was so strong with community colleges. And they both were stellar volleyball players, just stellar. I think at that time, Corey was like the ace setter in the state, and he was just amazing. And my background in volleyball is I didn't start playing the game until I was 33. And that's right, 33. And I told
you have a daughter or do you have your son that played?
Yeah, my daughter played in
Okay.
high school and in juniors.
Okay.
But I didn't start actually playing the game and learning the game until I was like 33. And so Paul Becklin comes along and he says, we have some work to do. But I was also a runner, and Paul made the 1980 Olympics team in track. I think he was a miler. And when he found out that I also ran, I think that motivated him to work with me. So he got me out running, and then he got me under his wing and taught me so many skills in volleyball, which was amazing. It was fun, but you're 33. You're not gonna hit the highlights.
Yeah.
But I understood the game, and
Yeah.
he hired me as his assistant coach at Pima College. And so that gave me some credibility with the Colorado group. It's like, okay, so she's not just a neophyte here.
So this happened before 89, or this was after 89, after we became a region?
He and I started in 88 because he was extremely interested in having Arizona become its own region.
Okay.
Pretty simple. And then we just developed a good friendship. And I was older than he, but he didn't give up on me. My daughter played with Corey's junior team, and she played at Amphi High School. So, yeah.
Is that where you kind of fell in love with the sport? Because I'm thinking back now. So 88, the men the Olympic men win their second gold medal. I think the women finished fifth that year. But there was a lot of, there's a lot of personalities on the women's team. Was that driving the game a bit at that point, or did it really have anything to do with it?
No, it really didn't have anything to do with it. It was going through some personal issues with my husband, we're now divorced. And it provided me an outlet to grow. So I was the commissioner. I was helping to develop juniors. I was better understanding the running of tournaments. I was working with a group of people that supported me as long as I was supporting them.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. What amazes me when I look back is how fast I grew in that organization. I was the commissioner for 3 years before I became the vice president of that.
Did you say 8 years?
3 years
3 years. Okay.
before I became the vice president of the volleyball division. And that was strictly political. Strictly. It was, Becky Howard was retiring, and she had her person to become the vice president. Well, that person wasn't liked by the commissioners. And I got a call one day from Ann Davenport. You know her, right?
Sure. Southern Cal. Yeah.
She called me and she said, you have no history with us. I said, well, I got 3 years. She said, no, you have no history. She said, we're putting your name in as vice president. Well, I said, I don't know what I'm doing. And she said, exactly. She said, you don't know the game plan. And that's what we need. Somebody who doesn't know the game plan, who's in it for the sport, who's in it for the kids, who wants to grow juniors. I said, so how much time does it take? She said, take some time. And at that point, I was single. I was raising my daughter. I thought, well, what the hell?
But you were working full time at that point too, weren't you?
Working full time, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you were, so even though the office was in Colorado Springs, you stayed down here. You were able to stay down here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to go to, I think it was like quarterly meetings, and then there's a lot of telephone conferencing had become a big deal, so there was a lot of that. What I didn't really know I was getting into was the politics, and that was an eye opener. So I go in for the meeting, and the people that were running could vote, but then you had to go outside the meeting because they were having discussions on who's good, who's bad, who's going to hurt us. Blah, blah, blah. So they come out. The other woman and I go back in, and it was a landslide. I sat there going, oh man, I'm hated by a couple of people here, particularly Becky Howard. But I did meet that goal of kind of saying, you're not going to keep me outside the table. So the first meeting as vice president, fly into Colorado Springs.
So is this 92 or 93?
93.
3. Okay.
Yeah, 93. I fly into Colorado Springs, and there's a freaking snowstorm. So coming from Tucson, flying into a snowstorm, I'm dressed for it. So I'm picked up at the airport, and the woman who picked me up was pleasant, but she didn't like me. And she said, we don't understand how you got this position, but, oh no, I'm not kidding you. Oh yeah. Oh, it was a hostile situation. So we go to the office, and John Kessel's there. And you know John Kessel.
Oh, very well.
He walks up to me and he gives me this hug and he says, thank God. Now I don't know who's on first. I got somebody in the office who obviously doesn't like me. And then I've got John Kessel, who's primo junior, premier trainer, who's thanking me. It's like, okay, well, no telling what tomorrow's going to bring. So there's a commissioner meeting, and I don't know if they still do this, Harold, but people are given awards for service and for activities, and I'm given this list of people that I have to give awards to. So I'm not one to stand at a podium and say, here's the winner. I just walked out into the audience and I shared stories with the people I had been involved with for the last 3 years and would give the story. There was one story where I was with 3 or 4 commissioners and we had a meeting and then we'd go out for dinner and hit a bar. And the fellow that I was giving an award to was a commissioner from Nebraska. And he was a driver that night. So the meeting, the dinner ends and we're walking to the car and he forgot where he parked the car. And he knew his car was stolen. He was just convinced of it. Well, we were like 2 blocks away from the car. And one of the people said, no, we need to go that way. Sure enough, there's the car. So I shared that story with the group because there's only 3 or 4 of us that knew it. And I give him his award. And Becky Howard was there and she said, oh, maybe people really do like you.
Wow.
Some people do. I said, I don't think you do.
Wow.
Yeah. So, the relationship I had with the commissioners was good.
Mm.
The growth of the region was stellar. The growth of juniors was, how do I say, phenomenal. There were so many people coming out of physical education classes that enveloped the sport, that loved kids, that created their own clubs. I don't remember how many clubs there were when I left, but it was pretty substantial. I had moved to Prescott in 1989.
Oh,
And when,
wow.
pardon?
I said that was literally the year the region started. So then you moved up to Prescott.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was. I moved to
Yeah.
Prescott pretty much right after that. Mainly because it was a great opportunity. So when there was the junior registration, I would come down to Phoenix, and I was also a notary. So we just tried to combine the registration period because at that time, some of the registrations required notaries. So I would just be there and make it easier for the teams to register.
So they would come to one place, like
Yeah.
to the region office and register at the region office?
It wasn't an office. We would meet at a high school.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And
Yeah.
the parents would come in with the registration forms. I would verify the parent's signature and sign off and stamp it, which was great. The hardest thing for me is, since you called, was there was a tournament, a junior tournament, and the insurance regulations are pretty stiff. You have to be registered to play. Unfortunately, there was a team from Prescott that came down, and I had all my information on registered teams, and I said, look, I can't let you play. I just can't do it. You had plenty of time to get your registration in, and you lived in Prescott. It would take you 10 minutes to come to my house with your registration.
Right.
The night before. Had I not done that, and somebody got hurt,
Right.
the region would have been liable for that, and the whole tournament would have been voided. Oh, I was so hated. So there's a lot of cons being commissioner. I mean, you make tough decisions, and I felt bad. I didn't feel bad for the coach, and I didn't feel bad for the club owner. I felt bad for the kids
Yeah.
that they've been practicing and anticipating this, and I was the bad guy.
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
another situation where it was the finals. It was the finals for the adult season. And a fellow from Mesa came in. The tournament was down in Tucson, and I was there. And he came in with 3 other players to play in the finals. Well, you got to have 6.
Mm.
Hey, we're registered. I said, you guys are going to kick ass. I know all of you. You can bury any 6-man team. I said, you're out of here. You can't do it.
Wow.
Oh boy. Again. Yeah, so some of the memories that came back there were very more positives than the negatives, but the negatives, I remember driving back to Prescott, a 5-hour drive, thinking, oh, they're going to kill me somehow.
I've got a few avenues I want to go to, but one of them is while you were the vice president of USVBA at the time, you were also, of course, running the region and the board and everything. Harold, when did you get involved, and in what capacity did you get involved with the board with Mary?
Well, I had taken a position to teach at NAU in the early 80s. And while I was up there, I ran into all these guys that I had seen on the court for several years, Peter Meyer being one of them. So when I moved to Flagstaff, I saw those guys and I sort of got connected, and I started playing with the guys up there. And Peter, in his usual way, tried to recruit me as an official. Well, wanted me to officiate NAU matches with him. I didn't know the rule book at all. It was horrible. So I only did one match and told him this would be a very bad idea to have me continue to do this. But I loved playing. And at one point, Peter said he had been talking to Mary, and he said, you should get involved with the board. And I said, I'm up here in Flagstaff. What can I do? He said, well, they need a secretary. You could do that. And I said, I have no idea what that means, but, I love this sport. So, I'll help in whatever way I can. And that's what I did. I came on board, and we had meetings in a variety of places.
What year was that you became secretary? What year was that?
Oh, I'd have to look at my minutes. I actually saved all the minutes. So it's
it must have been what, 93 or 94?
Oh, okay.
It was actually before that. I think it was late 80s, because I left Flagstaff in 89. So I had just sort of started when I got down here to the Valley, and had a chance to do a lot more in-person things. So it was probably around the late 80s, early 90s, because I remember having one meeting over at your condominium, and our meetings were not rigid in any sort of structure. So my minute taking would give you the illusion that we actually followed a schedule. And when you've got these people together, they all wanted to talk. So my job was to somehow craft some sort of organized conclusions out of all these conversations.
Yeah.
But that's how I got started. And Peter was there, and Mary, who I'm trying to think of the fellow from North Scottsdale. He was there. It was just, and it was more, as Mary said, it was really a group of people who are just passionate about the game, and trying to figure out, what could we do in our newly formed region to try to make this a region where we increased the opportunities, especially for juniors. That was where the tremendous growth was obviously occurring.
Yeah. So I have so many questions. So part of this is you guys are tackling something that's never been done before in Arizona. You're having to deal with issues and problems as you're creating opportunities for these kids to play with parents and coaching and officials and club directors and all this kind of stuff. So are you leaning on other regions for guidance, or are you just using common sense, or how are you guys navigating these waters?
Well, the regions at that time were not open to sharing what they were doing.
Right.
Really?
And I'm not sure why. The thrust of the organization was to build the volleyball community, but the regions themselves maybe were somewhat like we were, just trying to figure it out. There were several. There was Texas, Chicago, California, Nebraska. There were several that were dynamic, but did they want to share? No. I don't know. I don't know if there was a threat involved. I have no idea.
Do you know, Harold, why they wouldn't want to share?
Well, yeah, I think Mary would agree with this, that invariably at almost any meeting you went to, at some point or another, somebody brought up the fact that we were independent regions. And that independence seemed to be ingrained so deeply that people didn't see how coming together and sharing information at that time was a benefit to the national organization. I really think the whole idea of a national organization was not something that most people gave a lot of thought to. They were all trying to take care of their individual regions. And in our region, a lot of what we were trying to do came from the experiences that the people in our region had when they were either taking their junior teams to Albuquerque or San Diego or some other place, and just sort of trying to duplicate in some sort of way so that they got a good experience here in Arizona without traveling 5 or 6 hours.
Right.
Yeah. So go ahead.
At that time, the beach volleyball players were becoming quite strong, and the interest in viewing beach volleyball was amazing. However, I think that when the national organization was trying to envelope the beach players into the organization, the beach players knew that they had television and they had more publicity. And if the organization wanted to incorporate beach volleyball, the beach volleyball players wanted money. Not a whole lot of money there.
Yeah.
That I know of. And I got to meet, the old big shots, St. John Smith, and their egos were bigger than the volleyballs. Nice people, but if you're grassroots, put the blinders on, just give us the money. And that was a pivotal point in the volleyball organization. Like, how do we get the beach players into the Olympics and into the structure?
Yeah.
And also at that time, there was an abusive situation that was occurring between the coaches and the women players.
And you said women players?
Women players.
Coaches and women players. Okay, sorry.
And the 16, 17, 18-year-old junior players. And it was, I'm not going to say it was prolific, but it was becoming, the awareness was there that there has to be a strict code of conduct. And we ran into that issue in Arizona, which was very difficult for me because I was stunned and knew the coach pretty well. He was an active coach for a long time, and there were so many dynamics going on in the organization, which, like I said, was you got the beach players who are starting to make money in the game. You've got the Olympic structure that wants to tap into that, and you've got an abuse situation that can't be ignored. So yeah, the early 90s was just a heck of a time.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the things that might be helpful to anybody who's going to listen to this is that I don't think we should underestimate the impact, because early on, the magazine, Volleyball magazine, came out, and in those days, I mean, if you played volleyball, you got the Volleyball magazine. Then there was a second magazine just titled Volleyball, and people read those things from cover to cover. So they became familiar with these collegiate players who were always in these magazines, whether it was men or women, and all of, tournaments were advertised. And when it got to the beach, the average volleyball player could name you a couple of dozen people who played either indoors or they played on the beach. The AVP was just exploding in terms of popularity. There was a huge increase in popularity of this sport. And you had some colorful people who were playing, both pros and collegiate. So when you attract people to this sport, you also attract both good and bad people. And I don't think the sport had really thought much about the fact that there may be bad actors out there. We didn't have safe sport. We didn't even have training. I mean, you would have coaches who would try to teach their assistant coaches what's proper and improper, but it was very casual. And so some of this stuff happened, and it was, as Mary said, it was a surprise to many of us for years to come that someone would abuse the privilege of teaching kids the sport of volleyball. While all around you, the sport is exploding, and people want to hear about the good stuff, the positive stuff, and it's really a tremendous burden on the people who have to deal with the bad stuff. So it's there are always pros and cons to everything, but the popularity was great to see, but it brought some issues that we were not prepared for.
No.
Yeah. And this is all about the navigating the waters, you got to figure it out as you go, because you didn't have something laid out for you. So
well,
that makes it
particularly, as Mary said, because we weren't sharing, and you would think this would be a natural thing in something called a national organization or the NGB. You would think that you would get together and you would say, hey, we had this happen in our region. What would you guys have done? Or how would you have handled this? None of that happens. So each region is sort of blazing their own trail and hoping to God that they're doing the right thing that isn't going to land their region in some sort of hot water. So it was not an easy time.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah. The early 90s were the first really big escalation in junior clubs. It was a huge, like the early 90s, we kind of exploded. What were you guys doing on the board and as the commissioner to get more juniors playing, to get more opportunities? Was there clinics? Were you going, I don't know, door to door? Were you hiring, like coach education? Like what was it that was that had that first big boost of membership for the juniors?
But one of the things we did was get John Kessel out to Phoenix. And I had moved from Prescott back to Phoenix because the traveling was really difficult from Prescott to the airport and then going all over. So Kessel came out, and the idea was to get coaches trained. He did a 2-day clinic. I think he had a 3 or 4 hour block for the code of conduct. because they are finally realizing we really need these people to know you don't cross the line.
Yeah.
And then there was another section, of course, with just basic training, how to teach kids to do this. And he was amazing. The guy just is stellar. And he, pardon?
He still is.
Yeah. And if you talk to him, tell him I said hi.
I sure will.
That was the first thing that the board realized, that we need to get coaches that understood the game, how to teach it, and how to behave. Another issue that came up that we had to deal with was parents.
Still do.
At the game. And I remember I had to pretty much 86 4 parents because of their bad behavior.
Wow.
You know, let the kids alone, let the coaches alone, get out of here. You know, let them play the game. That was another issue that was really tough for me. It's like, come on, you don't need to be profane. You don't need to go yelling at your kid. And I hope that you've got some strong regulations on that, because that was, when I was there, that was the beginning of this bad behavior.
Would you go to the tournaments? Were you like attending the tournaments on Saturdays, Sundays, whatever? Yeah. Okay.
Most of the people didn't have any idea who I was. They just didn't. It's like
Harold's going through the same thing as we speak. He walks in the building, no one knows.
Who are you?
Maybe this will help.
It's not like I had a T-shirt that said commissioner. Most of the coaches knew me. Parents certainly didn't. But the liability issues at the junior tournaments are really significant, and you need to keep on top of them. And it's not easy. If you're in it for the kids, then make it for the kids. Step aside. You're trying to give your kid a sport that they can enjoy for years and hopefully get a scholarship, whether it's to community college or a 4-year school. The possibility of one of your kid making the Olympic team, slim to none. But let the kids enjoy the sport. There was one situation that came up that involved a parent who was probably in the hierarchy of a junior team. And at that time, I had a townhouse in Mesa, and I had to get a private line for myself because the phone calls were just unending. And it wasn't like you had a cell phone that you could block a caller.
You're saying the parents were calling you?
Oh yeah. This woman actually worked for the phone company, and I had gotten a private line, and she had called me on a Sunday night to complain about a tournament that she felt the scorekeeper was wrong, the referee was wrong, the coach was bad, and the team wanted their money back. And I said, oh yeah, no, yeah. I said, well, excuse me, but this is a private line. I've had it for a month. How did you get my phone number? Because there was only like 3 or 4 people that had it.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I work for the phone company and I got your number. I said, oh, that was the wrong thing to say to me.
Wow.
And she said, no, I have every right. And I said, you have no right to access my private, personal information. Wow. So I did what I do best. I wrote to the phone company and ripped them up one side and down another. And I was working at a law firm in Scottsdale, and I had the attorney read it. He said, oh, sure, go for it. Well, she lost her job.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Good.
Well, should have.
Pardon?
She should.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, and then the phone company gave me a new private line.
Oh, nice. Who you probably gave to nobody, so I'm sure.
Well, yeah, there was just the family people just had it.
Yeah.
I think Harold had it, and I think Peter had. I think the board had it, but it was that time period was just so. It was the beginning of the invasion of personal information.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, we didn't have social media, but you could kind of tell that
Yeah.
people were headed that way. That their opinion was right, and they could say anything they want, regardless.
This is about the time the internet started, right? 90,
Correct.
94, 95, 93, right around there, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
You know, Eric, to add to your original question, I think one of the things that helped the region grow tremendously, and it started when Mary was commissioner, was that once we were a region and we were having tournaments in our region, I think more and more coaches began to see these club tournaments as a great way for high school coaches to have their teams get additional practice playing together. And then it became almost a year-round sport for them. And as that attracted more of these high school coaches, the other thing that we saw happening is that clubs could get large, but invariably there'd be one or two coaches or parents who thought that, you know, they thought they could do a better job than wherever it was they were at the moment, and they would want to start splitting off to start their own clubs. And so what started off as, you know, just a handful of clubs, you started to see this explosion as new people moved to the state, new high school coaches added club teams that were closely associated with their high school, and these coaches who wanted to take advantage of additional coaching opportunities, maybe even start their own clubs. You had these three groups that were just coming to us, and every year we're seeing more and more clubs being formed. And now we're at a point where the money has really overshadowed a lot of what our original intentions were. And some of these clubs, as you well know, have decided that this isn't just a sideline anymore. This is a major opportunity to make your living owning a club. And so you've got clubs that have 20 plus teams. And when you consider what they charge each one of those players every month, they've now not only got people who are paying them for the club season that we used to think of as sort of 5 months.
Mhm.
Now you see this thing, they're trying every way possible to figure out how to include lessons or this or that, so that this is growing to where they're trying to make it so that parents are sending them a check almost every month of the year.
Yeah.
And there's some serious money out there in some cases,
Yeah.
which unfortunately, and this is my viewpoint, I think it detracts from what our original purpose was, to provide opportunities for all kids, because there are some low income areas where those kids are good players too. But if it gets too expensive, you know, they can't play the sport.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always felt that way with the Salvation Army team. Those kids were great. They poured their heart into it, and it was tough for them to get to the tournaments because of, I mean, we didn't charge a whole lot for the tournaments for the juniors, but that was still, you know, there was no way the region could have given them even a grant money to play. We just didn't have it.
Yeah.
But to Harold's point, missing the boat with not doing more for the lower income kids that, you know, they're talented. And,
Yeah.
and a lot of times they're just not given the opportunity to show their talent.
Yeah. I'm thinking about you in 1993, 94, And from where you started 10 years before with our athletes driving to Amarillo or driving to Albuquerque, and to the point where then you literally can walk in a gym and you've got a tournament going on. You've got, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 teams or something like that. There had to be an absolute sense of pride of what you had done with these, to be able to do what you did with this, the volleyball population, juniors especially in Arizona. Did you ever feel that, or kind of take a second and pat yourself on the back and say, good job?
No, I never patted myself on the back. I just felt good. It was just, that was my whole purpose in getting this thing off the ground, was the kids. I mean, I had my own kid who was just developing an interest in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And, for her to be gone for a whole weekend to play a couple of hours and then come back on a Sunday night and then have to go to school again, it's like, we need to do something better. I don't know that anybody on the original board, that their ego was such that it was pat yourself on the back, we did this. I think it was, let's keep progressing.
Yeah.
What else can we do? I mean, we developed coaches clinic that were required. They were done before the fall season, before the high school season. There were scorekeepers clinics. It just evolved, and when I had to step out, it was time for Harold to take over.
Yeah. Yeah. Where was the level? I'm assuming when it was, you had the first 6 or 8 or 10 clubs, because they really didn't get a chance to play much, or when they did, like you said, it's a drive to Amarillo and back for 2 or 3 or 4 matches. Where did you see the level? Did you see a significant rise in the play of the athletes as they started to get more competition?
I think, going back to Harold's point about the high school coaches getting involved, I saw the level of play become more competitive. The girls were outstanding. What I was really pleased about was that the development of the boys division, because there was not a whole lot of high school boys playing, and
Mm-hmm.
that was significant for me to see that they were taking an interest, and that the coaches were saying, we need to give these kids a venue. And when that happened, it was, oh, this is great. I mean, we're not isolated to just the girls. The development of the boys division was paramount for juniors.
Yeah.
Isn't it true that Tucson was once again sort of the
Yes.
starting point for that?
Yes. Yeah.
How so?
The high school coaches, let me go back. The University of Arizona had an intramural volleyball group, and those guys were very significant in the development of the boys high school players, mainly because the university was not about to sanction their own men's division in volleyball. So these guys just made it a point to get into the high schools and start teaching boys.
Wow.
And they're good.
Yeah.
They're great, and it's just spread. It's like, oh, well, if Tucson can do it, well, who likes Tucson? Phoenix is better, Flagstaff is better. I mean, you get this ego thing going, and it just blossoms. And egos are good up to a point, and when it allows the development of another young division, and giving kids the opportunity to play appropriately, to learn the game, to be off the streets, to give them a focus, you can't ask for more.
Yeah.
And I think if, unless I'm mistaken, I thought it was a young man in Tucson who was very interested in volleyball, but his school did not offer a boys volleyball team. And he proceeded to try out for the high school girls volleyball team. And that created quite a legal situation that went into the courts. And it really brought a lot of attention to the fact that boys did not have the same opportunities as girls when it came to volleyball.
Title IX.
Wait, what year was this? Do you remember?
I'd have to research, but I thought it was late 80s.
But it was, yeah.
Yeah. Harold, what did you notice, or let me put it this way. When Mary resigned or left and you took over, what was it about Mary that you appreciated that she kind of built the path for you?
Well, not much.
And kind of got you started. What were some of the things that she had done that you were like, that helped you?
You can never truly appreciate all that someone has done in a position until you're asked to take over that position. And it was at that point when I realized I didn't know a fraction of what Mary knew. I spent a huge amount of time on the phone to Colorado Springs talking to June and anybody else who would answer the phone and answer all my questions. I just felt like this thing is growing and we need to be prepared for it. But as Mary said, I mean, the board, when it first formed, was made up of all these passionate individuals who really just sort of gave of themselves and their time and their knowledge.
Yeah.
And as the region grew, some of those people had things to do in life and they moved on and new people came on board. And so continuing what she had already started was one thing, but trying to bring in new people and educate them and keep things running smoothly in the meantime was a challenge in and of itself. And keep in mind, just like Mary, I had a full-time job. So we had a little office on Broadway in a very very challenging part of town. And so I would go over after teaching, and I usually left my office around 10 or 11 at night. So I would go over there and work for a couple of hours in this little strip mall. Ours was the only light that was on, right next to Circle K. And I would come out at like 1 a.m, look around and think, what is wrong with me? This is not normal working hours here. I've really got to figure out a way to do this at an earlier part of the day. But you know, we still had really good people. There were people who were willing to take whatever time it took to learn, to grow, to help, lend a helping hand. And I was very fortunate because people were not looking to be compensated for their involvement in volleyball. They really just got pure joy out of seeing these kids have a chance to play volleyball. So yeah, there were probably more challenges than I'd like to remember, but you know, I was fortunate. I came in second. I didn't have to blaze the trail like Mary did. I just sort of took what she did and ran with it.
Yeah. Mary, you started, you said in like 86, 87 with the governance. What year did you finally walk away from volleyball?
97.
In 97. So you basically had almost like 10 years, fair? 10 or 11 years. Tell us why you walked away.
Because I was sued. There was a Chicago coach that was convicted of sexual abuse. He turned around and sued the board, the USVBA board. I was not involved in the time frame that the abuse occurred.
Mhm.
And it cost me $5,000 to get out of that lawsuit
Wow.
because the USBBA did not have insurance that covered the board.
Wow. So that was it.
That was it.
That was it. Yeah, and that was it.
And the board wouldn't step up and cover the costs of the members?
We didn't have the money.
Oh my God. Well, how did they figure each individual member had the money?
They didn't care. I mean, this guy in Chicago, he was trying to pay criminal fees.
Yeah. If that
Wow.
hadn't happened, would you have gone another 5-10 years, or you
Yeah,
think?
my heart was in it, but I lost all respect for the organization.
Yeah, understood.
I can see that.
Yeah. So wrapping up here, because I've kept you close to an hour already. What's your legacy, Mary? What's your legacy when it comes to volleyball, and especially volleyball in Arizona? How would you describe your legacy?
Oh, that's tough. Like I told you in an email, I left with a sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
I do want for the game to continue to progress. I do want kids to have the opportunity to play, particularly the lower income kids. And I hope there's a venue or an avenue that offers them a lower rate to play in tournaments, in coaching. Like I said at the beginning, I got involved because of the kids. The adults, they're going to do whatever they want to do. They're going to play the game when they want to play the game. They'll be involved in nationals when they want to, but it's the kids that really need the opportunity to develop. I mean, it's such a team sport that there's so much to learn, and I hope, if anything, I've given the opportunity for this sport to enhance kids.
I think I've saw numbers that when the region first started, we were at 300 to 400 athletes total. And this year through March, from the work of both of you, we're over 13,000 members now.
Oh, good job. Good job.
Yeah, which is incredible. I mean, that growth is just in the span of what, 35 years, our 35th anniversary, but that's pretty impressive. Harold, what's looking back and working with Mary and where Mary took the region, what do you think that her legacy is?
Well, I think you phrased it very well in the beginning. I think she was a pioneer, not just because she helped form the region, but because as a woman, it had to be that much harder to be in that leadership role and to rally the troops. I think she had a great group of people surrounding her and supporting her in Tucson. Excuse me. And I think her legacy is one that really established opportunities for coaches, for officials. If you look back at the record, you'll see that I think Peter Meyer was our only national official for the longest time. And due to the support that Peter got from Mary, that number has grown dramatically over the years. She just sort of laid the cornerstone for growth in lots of avenues, juniors. I think we had a lot of adults, but we got focused on juniors because they just kept exploding. But we are it was a wonderful transition from being almost a sub-region of Sun Country to watching Mary sort of see how we really deserve to be our own region. Not only changed us into the cactus region by ourselves, but then realizing, having all this baseball around us and having her get these phone calls asking about baseball games and spring training because we're the Cactus League. She shepherded a name change through before she left. And
Wow.
my very first meeting as commissioner was in Tucson to see the approval of a name change from the Cactus region to the Arizona region. So I'm very proud of everything she did.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Mary, I can't thank you enough. It took me a while to track you down, but I finally tracked you down. But I thank you for this. And again, as somebody who's been in this region working for a long time and somebody who ran a club and all that stuff, I didn't know all the things that you had to go through. And I think hopefully parents will listen to this and coaches, and they won't complain when they have to drive 35 minutes to Buckeye to play as opposed to Amarillo. Maybe they'll just be quiet now on. But I thank you for everything that you have done for not only our region, but for the sport in general. And again, not just in Arizona, but nationally, because a lot of our kids go to be coaches and those coaches go other places to play and coach. And so, I mean, it really is kind of this flowering tree that goes on for a long, long time. So that seemed to start with you. So I really, really appreciate it.
Well, you can thank Becky Howard for yanking my.
When people ask me how the region started, I'll say out of spite. It was literally out of spite. So that's how we'll start it.
There you go.
Yeah. Mary, thank you so much. Harold, thank you so much. Any last words from either of you?
No, I want to thank Mary as well. I think this is very gracious of you, and your contributions cannot be overstated. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and good luck, and may it continue to grow.
All right, we'll end on there. Everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for attending. Mary, Harold, thank you guys very much, and we'll see you on the court soon.